I'm not here to waste your time with another production tutorial you're gonna forget an hour from now. And that's because we're gonna solve a major issue here that's killing the low end in your final mix and master. These mastering limiters we all use are necessary, but they're also going to crush the low end energy of your kick and bass unless you know these two steps. Okay, you're in the middle of mastering your song, and you're going to bring this track up to 0 dBs using a limiter. This would be like the final plugin on your master chain. But the problem with this is most modern electronic music is very heavy in the low end. We balance our mix to be that way. But unfortunately, that low end energy is typically what overwhelms your limiter and causes it to clamp down and squash. The result? You lose your low end energy. And that's not what Moose wants at 2 a.m. in the club. Listen carefully to this example. I'm going to use this headphone button here on the bottom right of my plugin, which will isolate the delta signal. This allows me to hear which parts of my mix are actually being squashed by this limiter. So tell me, what do you notice? Even with my balanced mix, did you notice the kick and bass are still the two main elements being squashed by this limiter? Here's the solution, and stay with me here because this is going to be very important. Step 1. If you're using a high quality limiter, you might have noticed they come with these different options. Ozone's Maximizer gives us these different IRC modes. FabFilter Pro gives you their own styles. These different limiter settings are going to react to your signal in different ways, which also means these different settings are going to react to your low end in different ways. What you don't want to do here is sit there and say, oh, it's 2024, let's choose the modern algorithm. Because that's just assuming that some words on your screen are going to give you the best sounding result. Instead, let's just test them and see which sounds best. So once again, let's take advantage of this delta signal, and we're going to cycle through all these different IRC modes to see which handles my low end best. Did you hear how they all react in different ways? Some better, some worse, but it's also hard to hear those specific low-end frequencies with all the other crunch going on in the mids and highs. So for step number 2, let's dive into that specific area about 100 hertz and below. Now I gotta shout out and thank Nick DiLorenzo for this. He's a beast of an engineer, and one night I was sitting on YouTube, I'm binging his shit, and I'm watching him do this, comparing limiter settings, but focusing on the low end. And I had this moment where I realized I do a fair amount of comparing different settings and presets, but I never went in focusing specifically on how it was impacting my low end. Like, yeah, of course, I'm aware of this and it's in the back of my head, but seeing his level of detail really opened my eyes. So I'm not in a studio, as you can see, and many of you aren't either. You know this, having a subwoofer isn't practical when you're in an apartment or your bedroom. And without a subwoofer, it can be very difficult to isolate that low end frequency that we're trying to work with here. To make this easier, I've been adding this low pass filter to remove all the mids and highs from that delta signal. And technically you could set this up with any EQ. Then I also like to have a loudness meter open so we can listen and look at the levels at the same time. Once again, let's cycle through all of these IRC modes and see which ones sound better or worse. I would recommend using a good pair of headphones or speakers here because we are going to be listening to sub frequency. As you heard and saw in those loudness measurements, balanced, crisp, and clipping seemed to handle the low end the best. They were much quieter to the ear and they had higher LUFS values. Meanwhile, a setting like modern was squashing the low end harder, and you could tell because it was louder to the ear and it had a lower LUFS measurement. So from here I can go back to the 3 that I liked and adjust this slider to see if I can get a better response from any of these settings. It's kind of cool because sometimes you can gain more clarity out of this delta signal by adjusting the character setting. With that said, if you don't have the ozone maximizer, we could still do the same thing with FabFilter Pro L or whatever limiter you like to use that has the different settings. Even if you start from a preset, don't be afraid to try different modes and see how it handles your low end. You could even adjust the other settings that are given to you in the limiter and see how that handles the low end frequency. But once you find the setting that you like, you can now turn the delta button off, and we are going to listen to our entire song hitting the limiter. And how does it sound? Hopefully great, because if it doesn't, we have to go back in our process to fix this. You most likely have a mix issue that needs to be solved first. It's hard to get loud and clean sounding mix and masters, but it is possible. I want to show you the real deal, no bullshit approach. So meet me in the next video because we have a lot to talk about.